We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
Integrators are key in safeguarding IoT, CEDIA advises in the Cyber Trust Mark comments with the FCC in the U.S.
I do have to give them some commendation. We're 15 years removed from what was the senator calling the internet a series of tubes. They're trying to start to understand it. They're trying.
You don't seem to know jack about computers or the internet. But hey, that's okay. You're just the guy in charge of regulating it. So
we talk adding light commercial, private cinema, and the U.S. government's cyber trust marks. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 407, Series of Tubes. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Paul Williams. He's the managing director of the home management business unit over at NICE. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, Matt, it's great to be here. I'm doing fantastic.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. Then we have Mitchell Toolen. He is my producer here at AVNation because it's following Thanksgiving. So he's stepping in and stepping up today. How you doing, Mitch?
It's great to be here, Matt. I'm sorry for everyone else.
Excellent. All right. First of all, hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. If you were in the U.S. or if you kind of piggyback on it like I do, and hopefully your weekend was great and you didn't spend a boatload on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. All right, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro and Pete Baker. Is now time to add light commercial projects to your portfolio as housing and renovations are dipping. Customers are spending more on entertainment and restaurants again, so it's a ripe time to explore light commercial or the resi-mercial markets and prospects. Go read through the article. It is a good one, and Pete does cover some really good things as far as explaining what light commercial is, because to be honest, not everyone is aware of that. But they go through a bunch of cool things as far as becoming educated in new products and vendors and how you can establish credibility with your expertise in kind of this new vertical. Paul, what I wanted to start with you on with this one is light commercial or resi-mercial is always kind of just touted as like an add-on. And you can just add this vertical on, keep doing what you're doing and just get into the commercial market. And as someone who came from that side before we got into resi, there are some vast differences, even in light commercial or resi-mercial, between how you not only run the project, but also the application, the products you use, the engineering, the safety. There are so many things involved in commercial environments that aren't there in residential. How do you go about learning the proper methods and methodologies of working in commercial environments?
Well, I think the first step, and I think you're absolutely correct. It's one of those things that we saw, and we can even step back to the last downturn when we had the 2008, 2009, had all of the housing crisis, and people are going, "Oh, go get commercial. You go get commercial. It's gonna be able to get your business to float along until residential comes back again." And I think a lot of dealers and integrators tried it and found out it wasn't as easy as people were saying. Just go ahead and start doing that. So there's a couple of things that I would suggest. The first one is you need to learn about it. So you've got to go spend some time in understanding what's going on there. Infocom, has some great information that's out there about what's going on in that commercial environment. You need to understand what the customers want and what they need in that space. And it could be very simple. I mean, it could be just like a professional office space where I'm just providing distributed audio to a lawyer office, a law office, or to a doctor's office. And that's simple enough. You can figure that out and make that work. Or it could be very complex, where I'm going into a sports bar and they've got 100 televisions and they want to have the ability for all 100 televisions to watch 100 unique things, right? And now I'm really complex. And then how are they controlled and who has access to that control? So it gets very complex very, very, very quickly. And so you need to understand that environment. So you're going to have to learn about what those environments are. I would say the biggest thing is just like a residential project in the fact that you can get in over your head pretty quickly. So, know your limits, know what you can and can't do. And then once you've done that, you're going to have to lean on your partners at the same time too. And those your providers, the manufacturers that you work with. And we do that with our dealers and our dealer base. We provide information back to them. They ask questions about, what have you done these types of projects? What do we need to be aware of? And we'll give them the things they should be aware of. And we'll also help them through those projects same time too. But my biggest advice is learn about the customer, learn about what their wants and needs are, just like I would as if it was a residential customer. But then secondly, also know you're probably not going to use the same products. And some of them will, but you're probably products you're not carrying today that you will need to carry in order to be able to take on that project. You need to understand what those are. And do you have access to them? Do you know how to use them? Are you going to be able to implement them correctly? And are you going to be able to provide that environment that customer wants at the end of the day? And don't get in over your head.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, Mitch. We've been running this show a long time. We've been talking about getting into resimercial or light commercial for a long time. Is now the time, or was it 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we started? Is this just one of those things that our industry just continues to push, no matter what the external influences are?
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I was thinking this, and I was almost going to answer your question with another question, more rhetorical. But I can't think of anyone that we've had on as an integrator who doesn't do commercial on the side. Is there anybody who's just strictly exclusively residential? Because
there's a handful.
Okay, there's some,
but again, they're super niche.
And I don't know if that's because I'm too young for it, but I don't know if that's because that in 2008 the market was drying up and they had to jump over. Everyone likes that pivot word, but it's older than the pandemic. But it seems like that's just, you should be doing some light commercial. I don't think there is. I mean, now that I've been immediately contradicted, there are primarily residential people, but I think you should just have your stuff. You should know how to do light commercial and you should do res commercial. I think honestly, maybe it's just that the reason that resimercial is such a hated word for some integrators is just because that line is blurring. And I think maybe that's just kind of where we're at, where you need to know how to do both instead of just being stuck in one niche.
Yeah, that's a really good point. All right. Speaking of niches and companies that just do likely residential, this comes to us from Residential Systems, Navigating the Private Cinema Evolution, a deep dive with Ryan Brown, a maestro of private cinema design. Go read through the article. It's kind of an interview by Sam of Ryan Brown, who's the CEO of Paradise Theater. And they kind of cover Ryan's entire, start to finish, as far, maybe not finish, but the biography of how they got to where they are and the level of private cinema that they are now doing, as well as the inclusion of RP22 coming out from Cedia, that's really kind of setting some standards, some additional standards for the private cinema world. So go read through the article. It's honestly a very good article. Mitch, let me start with you on this. We talk about private cinema a little bit, but not a ton because it is so niche. Do you think from the products that we're seeing, things like RP22, some of the stuff that we saw at Cedia this year, do you expect to see this niche expanding, or is this going to just kind of maintain the niche that is private cinema, that has always been there.
It depends. I hate that answer, but I think it is kind of what you should expect, because it depends on where you are. I think where I'm at in St. Louis, not a lot of private cinemas going up. You know, some of these pictures I see and I look at this and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to afford a fraction of this room in any sense. But you know, if you're on the West Coast with these very nice houses, or around the East Coast in some of these places, you've got the means for it. I think the divide might grow farther. You know, you've got your super high end luxury things, and those integrators are going to do one or two of those jobs a year and pretty much be set, between the regular stuff that we're doing, or that you're doing, of installing things in a home. I think that gap is just going to stay there.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, Paul. And I'm not trying to sound negative on this niche. I love this niche, and I would love to work more in this niche than we currently do. But there are some companies like Paradise that they live in this space. Rich Fregosa lives in this space. Dennis Erskine lives in this space. Is there seemed to be a point where, not to say that private cinema was becoming affordable, but there was a point where, you know, the projection costs had come down. You were getting ridiculously good projectors that used to be six figures, and now they were, you know, 50 grand. Not becoming.
Mitch is still going, that's not really affordable.
Oh my God.
It's not affordable for me either, but you know, like it went from being the price of a decent it went from being like Bentley price to being like a decent luxury car price, right? You could get into the cinema world. We're now talking direct view LED. We're talking some of the waveforming stuff that we saw from Trinoff, that came out of Cedia. Again, things that are complying with RP22. Amazing spec. But the costs are going up substantially. Is this market, does it have a true way forward? Or is this going to just continue to delve, kind of as Mitch was saying, into that 1% of the 1% that can really play in this space?
Well, it's a good question. We've seen, you know, private cinema over the last, you know, couple of decades that I've been involved in the connected home and the connected space. We've seen it ebb and flow. We've seen where, you know, I didn't see a new home build that didn't have a theater built into it, or a cinema built into it, with risers and everything, the chairs and the whole bit. And then we kind of ebb and flowed away that and went to entertainment, listening rooms, multi-purpose space that still had great audio, still had great video, but it was more of a multi-purpose space that could also be lived in. It wasn't just for this, I'm going to there with one purpose. It could be used as a variety of functions. And then we've seen that kind of ebb back into I would say popularity, but never really exit. If I think about true high-end home cinema, never really exit out of that niche of really serving that 1%. And I think the costs, while you said that, you know, they've come down a little bit, there's always been, for the audio file, for the video file who wanted the ultimate experience, there has always been the next technology, 4K, 8K, wherever we go, the better and greater audio. There's always been that next thing. I could always spend a lot of money on those cinemas. And I know integrators, as you mentioned, a few there, and others that literally, you know, that is their business. They do high-end home cinemas. That is their business. If they also have to do some control, or also have to do some distributed audio as part of that, it's a sub to the rest of their business, but their primary business is creating these amazing theaters and cinema experiences, which you see when you go to the CD Awards and you see the pictures of these things. And Mitch, to your point, you know, I will never be able to afford one of those likely in my lifetime, and that's okay. But I think that will always exist. I don't think that business is going away. And for those dealers that are focused in on that business, I think there's an opportunity for them. And there will always be new technologies coming along to make bigger, better audio, bigger, better video. And so I think it's okay for a focus. I would say if every one of the integrators that listen to this podcast and listen to the others, if they were all to go, that is where I'm heading, it would be a mistake, because there's just not enough market there to sustain that. Not only that, but then the expertise that's necessary to provide that experience is something that comes over a long period of time. You've been in those cinemas. I've been in those cinemas.
Yeah. You
You can tell the difference when you go in there, and it's just so finely tuned. You feel the music, you feel the audio, you see the video. It's a different experience, and it takes a certain person to be able, with expertise, to be able to deploy that and to be able to deliver that kind of experience, where I'm going to spend what I would spend for a Bentley on that room.
Do you think that the divide between cinema and home theater is going to grow dramatically, or just, again, kind of maintain what it has been in the past?
My expectation is that we'll continue to see that divide stay where it's at. I think that there will always be a place for that person, for that individual who wants that high-end cinema experience as compared to a normal home theater or a listening room experience. And I think that we'll continue to see the percentages be close to the same. I don't expect that divide grows dramatically. I think it's going to stay where it has been, and it will ebb and flow slightly. But even over the last 20 years, as I've looked at it, the ebb and flow of that has been like, sub 10% of movement either direction.
Yeah.
It just doesn't move
Yeah.
a lot. It's not like suddenly everybody moved to home cinema, or everybody moved off of home cinema into home theater. The divide will exist. It will continue to be exist, and it will ebb and flow a little bit between, like I said, sub 10% back and forth, depending on what's happening. And it really has a lot to do with several factors that I build into that. Home construction and home design, I think, plays a big part of that. We start to see a lot more of these open floor plans, and segregating a room off that does nothing but that is not actually what I'm seeing. I'm seeing more open space, more open floor plans as we look at new homes that are being built. And so I continue to see less and less of those rooms that are special purposed rooms.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know every time we get sent a set of prints, and they're wanting design input as they're trying to plan this out, there's always the conversation of, we want the media room, the theater room, the cinema room, whatever they call it, downstairs. And you roll the plans out and go, okay, well, you're going to need some walls. And they go, no. I'm like, okay, so you want an entertainment room.
The whole downstairs.
And you look at it and you go, okay, so we got to figure out what terms we're talking.
I think that's the level set part of that as well, that has to happen with consumers about what is a theater, what is a cinema, what are those two things. Even for dealers, I would say there's always some debate about what those two things are.
Yeah, I always ask my customers to tell me what they think it is, and we'll go with that, and that'll be what we work with.
Customer's always right.
Exactly, as long as the checks cash, and then they're not. All right, let's hit the last story that comes to us from CE Pro. Integrators are key in safeguarding IoT, CEDIA advises in the Cyber Trust Mark comments with the FCC in the U.S. Very long and short, Darren Riemann, who works over for government affairs at CEDIA, who, anytime I ask, is the most important person that works at CEDIA by far. Sorry to Daryl, but Darren is the most important person that works there, and everyone in our industry should really know his name and applaud him for all the work he does. But he submitted a bunch of comments to the FCC in the fleshing out of their program for cybersecurity, which is going to be similar to kind of like the Energy Star label that you get on your appliances, showing that they comply with those energy ratings. The Cyber Trust Mark is going to certify consumer IoT devices that essentially outlines that they are maintaining or meeting a certain standard that will be outlined by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Paul, this is fantastic that Darren wrote in some comments and submitted some comments, essentially highlighting the fact that CEDIA is the best organization and has the best personnel to be able to help ensure that this is being installed properly and applied properly, et cetera, et cetera. As a manufacturer, Does this mark does it do enough? What's CD's role in it? Can that be expanded? How is this going to kind of flesh out from your standpoint as a manufacturer?
Yeah, I think it's well. I applaud it. First of all, I think it's a good initiative. And once again, I appreciate the work that CEDIA is doing on behalf of the industry and continues to do on behalf of the industry, because I think it continues to show the validity of what we're doing and the industry I'm very passionate about as well. So I appreciate everything that they do, including all of the government action and everything that's happening there. I think this program starts to address one of the concerns we've seen that's come from the consumers and from even myself. As you bring these new devices into your house, have you suddenly opened up a hole of privacy concern for you and your family? And I think there are enough stories that are more than just stories. They're proven facts of these incidents that happen where your data, your personal images, your video, your audio are exposed to people that shouldn't be exposed to that information. It should be your data. It's private. It's about you. And so it certainly is an issue that consumers are thinking about. And so if this helps in providing some comfort to those consumers about what that is, I think that's great. I think there's a couple of challenges that go along with it at the same time, and then we can come back maybe to your original question. First one is consumer awareness. So where is the consumer awareness going to come from? Energy Star did a bunch of work, and if you go to an appliance store, you go to anywhere you can buy appliances, there's a big sticker that's on these device on the utility says you can save this is the energy consumption over time. That's all part of what's Energy Star. It's on light bulbs, it's on everything that you get that shows that. And so there's a bunch of consumer and investment that's gone into advertising to educate a consumer about that. So my question will be, well, where's that education going to come from? If I'm at a store, or if I'm talking to a dealer and I start to ask, are the devices you installing compliant to this standard? I have to actually know that standard exists. Or the dealer's going to have to do a bunch of education about, okay, I'm installing products, but they only conform to this criteria. And I think there's going to be some push and pull that go along with that. I think it'll take time, but my question is going to be, where's the education going to come from to help educate a consumer about that validity? For me, as a manufacturer, we've been looking at and trying to understand more about the program so that we can participate, because I do think it's something that we should be part of. I think it's something that will, if nothing, for the sheer fact that helps give us comfort that our products have been tested to a standard that allows us to be able to declare we have products that we're providing consumers have their privacy in mind. And so whether or not they know about it or not gives me some peace of mind of knowing the products that we're providing to consumers are providing that level of privacy for consumers, which we wholly uphold, is that we want to make sure that our consumers feel like what they have is very private and that they're not being shared to others that shouldn't have that information. Long-winded answer there to your question.
No, that's a fantastic answer. Mitch, wrap this up for us and put a bow on it. Energy Star carries a little bit of weight, right? But people mostly love it from the fact of, if I get this dishwasher, it's going to cost me $37 a year if I run it every day. I don't know how they quantify security in such a black and white way, right? If they can't find a way to quantify that the average user will understand, do you think this will hold any weight with the average consumer?
I don't know. I think maybe there's a little bit of it. I mean, but to be fair, most of the time you see stickers on things all the time, and it's just kind of like, great, I don't know what this means. That's probably where you're headed on that thing of, it sure seems neat. I do have to give them some commendation. We're 15 years removed from what was the senator calling the internet a series of tubes. That they're trying to start to understand it. They're trying. That's the important thing. I think back when it was 2018, 2019, when net neutrality was the issue, there were the questions being asked during those things were so trivial that you're like, these are the people that are setting these things up, and they have no idea how the internet works. They have no idea how security and networks at all. This, to me, feels like they're actually trying to give a crap, for lack of a better word. And I think if I saw this on a thing, I don't know if it would influence me. I don't know. I'd say, wow, this router has a cyber trust mark on it. I'm sure I want to get that one. I think I'd be more inclined to say, hey, this one says Night Gear on it, so I want that. Ding. I don't think they actually sponsor us. So I don't know.
No, that'd be great if they did, though.
Putting a plug in there.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't know if it'll work or not, but I think it's a good step forward. And if CEDIA wants to get involved and, someone who actually knows what they're doing can say, here is what matters in a secure device, then I'm all for it.
Just to throw my 2 cents into this. I love what they're trying to do. I hope they can find a way to market it effectively and to set a standard for it that has some weight with it. Because my concern is that to get adoption, they're going to set a standard that is so low, like the bare minimum. I remember a couple of years ago, a couple of the manufacturers were trying to push a system where essentially across the board, anything that required a login would use the serial number of the device, so that you physically had to have the serial number to do that initial login. And that met with so much frustration. And I know there's some reasons why, as Paul's nodding his head.
Yep.
But it was we've already got a generic password on all of these, and we are not changing it because it's hard. So I hope that they can get above the bare minimum, or at least raise that bare minimum to a point where the average user is not locked out of them or finds it overly complicated, but provides them with some level of basic security, which will be great. And knowing that, Darren's working on this, the people over at NICE are working on this, as far as from their end, and every other manufacturer is playing with this as well, it'll be really good to hopefully see this come to fruition. All right. Let's wrap it up there. Thank you both so much for joining us. Paul, if people want to connect with you, learn more about NICE, where can they do that? So
if they want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to talk to folks in the industry and around. I can be reached at paul.williams@nice4u.com, and that's all spelled out NICEFORYOU.com. Or if they want to find out more about what we're doing at NICE, come see us at nice4u.com. Take a look around. We've got some really good things we're working on and really exciting things we've got for the future.
Awesome. Thank you again for joining us. Mitch, if people want to connect with you, learn more about AVNation, all of those things, where can they do that?
Yeah, see, for the former part, I would say don't. I prefer being in the background, if I'm being quite honest. But instead, go check out AVNation.tv, where you can find shows like ResiWeek, stuff like State of Control for control system programming, Women in AV, which is all about the women in the AV industry, as you may imply, and a lot of other shows. And while you're there, check out our underwriters. They're the ones who support us and get us our nice Thanksgiving turkeys on the table. So check them out, and we would be ever so grateful.
Thank you for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is Erin Marmoran of EdTech. The world of higher ed AV is growing rapidly. That's why each month we hear from the best and brightest from colleges and universities all over the U.S. Check out EdTech on avnation.tv or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
This is AVNation.